My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Greg Alessi is one of my best friends growing up. I've had the pleasure of knowing him since 6th grade when we began playing ice hockey together. Greg is the type of person that is always in great spirits, and the one quality I've always admired about Greg is no matter what situation he is in, I have never once heard him complain about anything. Even when he had every reason to complain, give up, stop trying, he carried on and made his life beautiful again. On December 21st, 2009, his life would change forever. And that mentality of never complaining, never giving up, and making the best out of every situation in life has made me extremely grateful and proud to call Greg a very good friend. Please welcome Greg Alessi.
What's up,
Greg,
brother?
Greg, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing phenomenal.
Very flattering introduction.
You like that?
Yeah, thank you.
Am I making you blush over there, guy?
Yeah, dude.
So, Greg, where are you from?
I grew up in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. I'm currently in Asbury Park, though. I'm by the beach.
Did you love growing up in Tinton Falls or what?
Oh, I loved it. It was great.
You got a solid crew over there.
Yeah, and what's nice about it is I stayed in the area, so I still have a good core group of friends like yourself and all of our friends that we grew up with from ice hockey to high school, and all my Tinton Falls guys as well.
When did you start playing ice hockey, Greg? How did you get into it?
Probably about the same time you did. I started skating when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I think my parents just threw me out to the wolves and sent me out there. And I didn't actually start playing actual ice hockey, I think, till I was about 6 or 7. And I think I met you when probably about that time, 8 years old, 9 years old.
Yeah, the Eagles.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that I've taught you everything you know about ice hockey or what?
I mean, you could say that. You definitely taught me a few things. We'll say that.
So, where'd you go to high school?
So I went to high school at Red Bank Catholic with you.
Yeah.
Good old Casey's.
And you played some pretty high-level hockey at a young age. You played with a lot of kids that are in the NHL now on that Rockets team, right?
Yeah, I did. Kid John Carlson on the Capitals. Played on the Olympic team. He's a great guy. Me and you both, we played a pretty high level. It was good.
Yeah, you were always I feel like you were always better than everybody else at a young age because you were the biggest kid out there when we were young.
I was. I stopped growing at 5'7" when I was 13
Greg was the tallest
years old.
kid in Pee-wee's.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't grown since.
Yeah.
So, Greg, what did you want to do after high school?
After high school, I wanted to either go into finance. That's what I started to study in college, was finance. But I also wanted to be a police officer as well.
Nice. And where did you want to go to college?
I wanted to go to college either in Towson, Maryland, either in Florida or Arizona. It was either go somewhere where a lot of my friends were going, or it was go to warm weather.
Yeah, and what'd you end up choosing?
I chose warm weather all the way, brother.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You had quite the time out there. I remember getting some voicemails late into the night.
The time difference.
Yeah, but I just remember seeing pictures of everything out there, and it looked like an awesome time out in Arizona.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely the time of my life. Between the weather, the school, the girls, obviously, everything was great. Everything was awesome.
I remember that one Thanksgiving you spent out in like Laguna Beach. That must have been awesome.
Yeah, I had a good support system out there. Being that I didn't know anybody on the West Coast at the time, friends that I did meet the short time in college took me in like I was one of their own, went to family gatherings, things like that. So I was definitely lucky.
All right, Greg. So I have never personally heard this story before, never really asked you about the exact details, and really have no idea what you went through. And I don't think many people do because you've never really complained about it. And it's just amazing what you've been through and what you've been able to come out of and all the adversity you faced. So what was going on December 21st, 2009? Like, walk us through the whole day. Like, did you wake up and did you feel any different? Was it just a regular day or?
One of the things that I don't know if I've ever told anyone this, maybe my parents and the person I was with, but it was, obviously December 21st, it's right around Christmas time. And I was on my college winter break at the time from Arizona State. And a good friend of ours, girl Katie, picked me up from the airport just a day or two before, maybe December 19th, December 18th, something like that. And we were actually...
You got home from Arizona State, Katie picked you up, and then you guys On your way?
Yeah, we were on our way. She was driving me home, and we saw a really bad car accident on a highway on the way home from the airport. And she was driving, so she obviously had her eyes on the road. I turned and looked, and I saw a dead person, man.
Really?
Yeah, about 2 days before this happened to me, I saw someone lying next to their car. There was police and everything. They must have just got there. Obviously, at that point, I didn't know what was going to happen to me just a few days later.
Did anything run through your head? Were you like,
I mean, it was definitely crazy. You don't see that I've never seen a dead person. Come on.
yeah.
And yeah, so it was definitely crazy. But no, I didn't think anything of it, obviously.
So I know when you talk to some people that have had like a traumatic incident happen, like when they wake up that day, something feels off or something just doesn't quite feel right. Did you experience that at all, or was it just another day?
Just another day for me, man. We were going to New York. I was with my father.
You going to the city or upstate?
We were going upstate to his family's house, actually.
And what time was it when you guys hopped in the car?
All this is kind of hazy to me, timetables, all that. But I would say late morning, early noon.
Okay. And so you guys are driving up the turnpike, and what happened next?
So yeah, we're driving up the turnpike. I'm in the passenger seat, actually. My father was driving. My father's a good driver.
What kind of car were you guys in?
We're in a Jeep Grand Cherokee. And we're driving up the turnpike, and just a normal day. It might have snowed that, like the night before or something like that.
Right, it might have been icy or something, right?
Yeah, something like that could have been going on. And yeah, so we're driving and just going normal speed, and in the blink of an eye. Well, actually, back to driving. My father's from New York. He likes driving on the truck side. When you go on the turnpike, You could go trucks or you could go cars. And my dad likes to drive on the truck side because he thinks they're professional drivers. They know what they're doing, this and that. So yeah, that puts us on that side. And yeah, my whole life kind of came before me. All of a sudden, I looked up, and there it was, one of those big 18-wheelers just going sideways right in front of us.
And where are you in relation to the 18-wheeler? Is it a little bit in front of you or right next to you?
It was definitely ahead of us in exact distance. Everything happened.
Right, yeah.
Something like that. It happened so fast. And obviously, I'm not the driver, so it wasn't my duty to really keep my eyes completely in front of me at all times. But yeah, I did see it, and I yelled a big, oh shit. And then that's the last thing that I remember before everything happened was, oh shit.
Damn. So that happens, and when did you black back in?
I don't know how long after, but it wasn't that far out. It wasn't that long after because I was still in the car, obviously.
Oh, you blacked back in the car? Like after the accident?
Yeah. I woke up in the car, and I felt pain, but I didn't feel that bad of pain. It was I was kind of in shock, I guess. But I looked over at my dad. The first thing I did was ask my dad if he was okay. My dad's an older guy. He's been through some health problems of his own. And he said, yeah, I'm fine. What about you? What about you? And I lifted all my limbs up, touched some areas, and that's when I realized my right arm was mush. I could only lift up my shoulder. When I went to lift up my whole arm, only my shoulder went up. I didn't feel anything else, and looked down, and it was a disaster. I don't want to get too gory on this, but there's blood, there's pieces everywhere.
What's going through your head at that point?
I thought I was going to die. There was a lot of blood. I've never been in a situation like that. It was really scary. And at the time, besides my arm being, almost cut off here, I'm looking up. I'm underneath a tractor trailer at this time. We're trapped underneath it. I don't know if there's gas leaking. I don't know what's going on.
You're pinned under the 18-wheeler right now.
Yeah, we were pinned underneath there. It was kind of my side that took the brute force of the accident. Right. Yeah. So that's why luckily my dad was okay, but I was stuck underneath. I was cold. I just remember yelling how cold I was. And you see movies, things like that, which, it sounds corny now, but before everyone dies in a movie, they get really cold. I was like, shit, I can't go now. Come on. And yeah, a lot of things raced through my head. Obviously, people I didn't get to say bye to, my mom, my sisters. Obviously I had my dad right there, loved ones, friends, family, things like that. All that crosses your mind, but at the same time, you're in such a panic because of how much pain there was.
At this point, are you just waiting for someone to get you out of the car? Can you get out of the car, or is it too pinned down?
I don't think I can. No, the car was pinned down exactly where I was. My dad could have squeezed out. We sat there, I believe, for a pretty good amount of time. When I heard the first person who actually came in to help was an not off-duty, she's not a cop. She was
paramedic?
She was a nurse, but she just wasn't working at the time. She was driving to work or something. She told me she saw that cars, when they see an accident, they think everything's taken care of. especially if they didn't see the actual incident happen. They think, oh, yeah, everything's fine. And a lot of cars, they're in the New York City area, they just want to get to where they're going.
Yeah.
They don't care about anybody else. So cars are just going around at this point. This nice woman who, I have her saved in my phone. It's actually weird. It's a story for later about how I actually met her. But I have her in my phone as Allison Lifesaver.
Wow.
And she told me she saw two heads in the car, and she ran out, and she went through the trunk of the car, and she gave me a neck brace and a blanket because I was so cold. My body temperature must have been going. And the first thing I did was, with how bad my arm injury was, I could tell. I was wearing this is going to sound stupid. I was wearing an Argyle vest.
What is that?
An Argyle vest. So it's very strong and like a fiber material. I wrapped my arm in that to kind of put some pressure on it. Obviously, all I know is movies. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor like you over here. All I know is movies, and you see people with injuries, and they just wrap things up. They put pressure on it, things like that. So it's kind of all I was doing at that point. Until we waited for some more serious medical staff to come. And yeah, so I kind of just waited. I was in and out. I couldn't tell you a timetable. There was screaming. I was scared, things like that.
So when they took you out, what did they do with you?
Well, when I got taken out through the driver's. It was either driver's side or the back door on the driver's side, because my seat actually got disconnected from the actual car. So it was my front seat was kind of sitting on the back seat, if that makes sense at all. It's kind of hard to picture. So I was kind of stable. My arm was stabilized. Ambulance people came in and stabilized my arm so that they could move my whole body without my arm flailing around. And at this time, you hear all of them. They're talking on radios and stuff. They're talking to each other. Obviously, the way they talk to each other, you could tell the severity of the situation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
What
were they saying?
Even if you're not a medical professional, you hear things like compound fractures, get this, get that, talking about different medications, morphine, things like that.
Did they have to get you like the jaws of life to get you out of the car? Like they had to open up the car like that?
No, luckily not. But no, they got me out without that, even though the car was totaled anyway. But
And how did they get you to the trauma center? Did they airlift you, or did they drive you there in the ambulance? Or
So I was put into an ambulance. And that's kind of where my memory of that day gets super foggy, because once I got in the ambulance, they started taking scissors to all my clothes, my shoes. I was wearing my favorite shoes. They cut my shoes up. Cut my shoes up. They cut my jeans off. They cut my shirt off. They cut everything off. They start giving pain medication and different medications to kind of stabilize you, make you feel more comfortable so that they could do their jobs in a more efficient manner, I guess. And so I'm comfortable. That's when it started getting hazy, because I guess all the medication I was on. I did get to the hospital, and I was rushed into a surgery, but my dad was also brought to the hospital as well. And this is actually a story that, it kind of makes me cry sometimes. But right before I went into the operating room, this is the last thing I remember before I was in a stabilized condition, was they put me next to my dad in the stretchers, the rolly stretchers. The doctors don't know the extent of my injuries or my dad's injuries, so our necks are completely stabilized. So I could only look up at the ceiling at this time.
Wow.
My dad could only look at the ceiling. So they're like, listen, your father's right next to you. You're about to go into surgery, blah, blah. If there's anything you guys want to say to each other, say it now, blah, blah. And still at this point, with the severity of what happened and with the drugs I'm on at this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I still might die. I have no idea. Doctor might have told me, yeah, you're going to be okay, this and that. Just say something to your dad. But with the drugs, I don't know what they said to me. So with my dad, before I went in there, told him, listen, I remember what happened. I know it wasn't your fault. I love you. And whatever happens, we'll talk about it after. And, he said, Greg, I love you too. And they put us in separate rooms, and I went right into surgery.
That's like, just thinking about that conversation, like, that's like such a you and your dad conversation, like straight to the point, like not overly like emotional about it, just like, hey, I love you.
Yeah.
See you afterwards. Okay, so they bring you into surgery, your first surgery out of like many, but so what happened after that?
So after the first surgery, they kind of just, obviously they knew my arm was hurt, so they looked into that, but they did full body x-rays because at this point they don't know what else is wrong. I had some head injuries too, being that I had a lot of glass in my face. So when I woke up from the surgery, I had doctors in the room. I had my parents there.
You had your seatbelt on, right?
Yes, luckily.
Oh, thank God, yeah, okay.
That's kind of why I went with the seat, because that's why I moved with the seat. But yeah, so when I got out of surgery and I came to from the anesthesia and all that good stuff, I had doctors there, my parents were there, and they had a long conversation with me. They told me, there's no, obviously not paralyzed, you're not anything like that. You have no really head injuries as far as like fractured skulls, fractured bones in anywhere besides your right arm, which, is a blessing. After what happened, it's absolutely amazing that nothing else was hurt, given the situation. But that's when they started talking about my arm. They used some fancy words, but I think they were very good. These doctors had good bedside manners. They're trauma doctors.
Yeah.
They're trauma doctors. They've dealt with some of the most serious situations, and I'm very lucky I was put in their hands. But the biggest conversation we had after that first surgery was they weren't sure if they were going to cut my arm off or not. So I was looking at an arm amputation, and they told me in the first surgery what they really did with the arm was they stabilized the bones. The bones were my elbow was shattered into thousands of pieces. My forearm, the two bones in the forearm, I could be a doctor now, by the way. After all these surgeries, I know all these terms. All the bones got disconnected from each other. It was pretty bad, but they pretty much just cleaned out the arm. And one of the things they told me was, whatever you wrap your arm in, that sweater I was talking about, all the fibers of my sweater got into my arm. So
my God.
It took them hours to pick these sweater fibers out of my arm, which it wasn't a problem long term, but it made their job quite tedious.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they had to go in there, really clean it out, and there was a lot of nerve damage, bone damage, there was muscle damage, and they kind of had to reevaluate the situation between each surgery before they could really decide whether they were going to amputate or not, which obviously puts you in a pretty shitty situation. You don't even know, and here I am. I'm in so much pain. I'm on all these drugs as well, so my emotions were flying high.
And, were they saying to you, like, Greg, we're going to amputate the arm, or they're going to do the best to save it?
Yeah, it's pretty much, they're going to do the best to save it, but they got to tell me, I think, that they might amputate it from a legality standpoint. Yeah, they told me it's very possible, and I was upset. I started yelling, I started screaming, I threatened the doctor. But obviously, I went through a couple more surgeries in the next day or so. They stabilized all the bones, the muscles, and maybe 4 days after the accident, that's when I found out I was going to keep my arm. It was a good 4 days of me thinking, going to bed every night, not knowing if I was going to have an arm or not. And looking back on it now, even if I did lose my arm, I don't still think I'd be in the same position I am today. But in those 4 or 5 days, it was one of the toughest times of my life to really come to terms with possibly living the rest of my life with one arm. Whether other people look at you as a freak, as whatever, and then also the functionality standpoint of living your everyday life with one arm it was very hard to come to terms with that. But luckily, I didn't have to.
And do you even understand the magnitude of the situation yet? Like 4 days later, because you're on all these drugs, you're in all this pain. What's your mental state at this point?
I was pretty down on myself. I was depressed. But still at this point, I'm in so much pain at this point. I had one of those buttons in the hospital that they just pumped pain medicine into you. I was just cloud nine, just in a completely different land most of the time. I didn't really kind of sit back and like assess the situation and be like, well, a year from now I'll be here, 2 years from now I'll be here, and best case scenario I'll be here in 5 years. I never really had the mental fortitude at the time to really put it all together.
Yeah, even when there were days that you felt you were all right, they would bring you in for another emergency surgery, right?
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was me, Matt Sadecki, Jared Thompson, and Christy. We went to go see you, and we were sitting in the hospital, and you were fine. It was like a good day to come. We were ready to see you, and then the doctor or someone comes out, they're like, oh, Greg just got another emergency surgery, you guys got to leave. And we're like, we didn't understand. I don't know if anybody understood the magnitude of the situation until we actually saw you.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of surgeries, and that was I was in the hospital for about 2, maybe 3 weeks. My initial stay was about 3 weeks, and I want to say there was a good, 9 surgeries in like 3 weeks.
9 surgeries in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it could have been more. It could have been more than that. Again, it was all kind of a haze that 3 weeks.
And not only were you fighting the arm surgeries, but the infections.
No, at this point, I didn't have any infections yet, luckily. Otherwise, if I had an infection this early on, I think they would have just said, you know what, let's just cut it off. The other problems I was dealing with was the first week out in the hospital I was in the front seat and the windshield shattered on us. And for about 2 or 3 weeks, I was picking glass, like shards of glass, out of my face, out of my forehead, my scalp, my neck. There was just small, tiny pieces of glass. I think over time, when stuff goes into your skin, it like comes out.
Yeah.
It like forces itself out. So over time, I'm just finding glass in my head, things like that. Still at this point, not to get ahead, but my whole mindset on the whole thing is always, no matter what, somebody next to you, somebody down the street always has it worse. And everyone in the world has problems, and somebody's going to have it worse than others. And in most cases, somebody does have it worse than you. The guy next to me, in the trauma center, I had to share a room with somebody. And my mom was talking to the kid's mother in the waiting room. They're both pretty upset. My mom's a pretty emotional lady. She was talking to this lady. It was maybe a 28. I was 19 at the time. This guy was probably about 28, and his mother was there. This guy was on his 25th surgery. He was there for 3 months, and his entire body was in a full body cast. And
what happened? Do you know what happened to him?
He was in a motorcycle accident. I don't know the specifics, but he was in a pretty bad motorcycle accident. And that, just right in that moment, that kind of started my whole thing of somebody always has it worse, and never get too down on yourself. And literally, somebody always has it worse. And the time period right in the beginning of this, the guy right next to me was in a full body cast. I could move the rest of my arm, my left arm, my legs, my head. My brain was working.
I don't know many people that can put themselves in that mindset, like that selfless mindset that, like, look at this guy next to me, and like, here you are, like that. Not many people can do that, and thank God you can, because that might have saved you.
Yeah, no, it was definitely tough being in the hospital, but also my support system was awesome too. So that helped me through the hospital. Between, just like you said, you, Jared, Matt, and Christy came. I had
Rizzo and all them, yeah.
Dozens of people come and visit me. My family came and visited me, from extended to, obviously immediate. My dad, even when he was cleared from the hospital, still slept in my room sometimes. I had friends that I hadn't seen in years come visit me. So my support system was really good. It added a lot of hope to the situation, that even no matter what happens, at the end of the day, I have good family, good friends.
So how long did it take for everything to settle down and, like, okay, this is real life now, like, now we got to focus on getting better and, like, rehab and physical therapy and all that stuff?
Sure. Well, so 2 to 3 weeks in the hospital with a lot of surgeries. They told me one of the biggest surgery, the biggest tell-all of my future, of my right arm, hand, and elbow, and the whole 9 yards, was a nerve surgery that I had. They took the nerves out of my leg and put them into my arm. It's called a nerve graft. And it's one of those things where the day after the surgery, it's like, well, we don't know if it's going to work. It might not, and you got to give it 2 years. 2 years to see if it's going to work, and it's going to if it does work, it's going to be gradual. It's not one day, things at the blink of an eye, something happens and you're fine. It's a gradual process. So I was told that, but still at this time, I hadn't seen what my arm looked like.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's been 3 weeks and you haven't seen what your arm looked like yet?
Haven't seen what it looked like.
Wow.
Because what they did was, my arm was wide open. Put it this way, it was wide open. So that instead of keep doing incisions for surgery, they would just keep it open and keep like a vacuum type system in there to keep it clean. So basically, the last surgery in the hospital was a skin graft where they took skin off of my leg to close up that area. And it was a pretty big wound. So at this point, after they put skin from my leg, I still hadn't seen it. So I had to go for a follow-up maybe 2 weeks after, or a week or two after, and that's when the surgeon took off all the dressing, the wound care stuff.
And were you like looking like intently at it, or were you looking away and just waiting for it to be all done? And like, what was your first reaction looking at your arm for the first time?
I didn't know what it was going to look like. I never asked the doctor what it looked like. I thought, to be honest, it was going to be like a normal arm, just without it working, I guess. But now he took it off, and I saw it, and it was just like a big burn. Imagine your entire arm being burned, and I lost a lot of muscle mass, so it looks like a chicken wing, actually.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like a chicken wing, and I was terrified at this point. It was scary looking to see that. Oh, and from the beginning, I never said this. I was always a righty. I did everything with my right hand, which was, that was another thing I had to look forward to, was having to do everything lefty. But anyways, yeah, I saw it. I was pretty scared. I was pretty mortified. At that moment, I thought in my head, oh my God, if this is what I think it looks like, how is someone else going to be able to look at me? How's my friends? How are my friends going to be able to look at this? How's my family going to be able to look at me? How am I going to get a girlfriend that's going to be able to deal with how this looks? Things like that. I immediately start running through my mind. But yeah, so he talked to me about the nerve repair and all that. And even at this point, I had a little bit of progress actually. So it was actually kind of promising as far as the functionality.
What was the progress that you noticed?
I mean, I went from not being able to move a finger. I'm talking like a dead, like limp hand, my wrist and my fingers. I couldn't move one of them. And all of a sudden I could like kind of move one. I couldn't make a fist, nothing like that. I could just kind of move one. It's kind of like one of those things where someone who thinks they're paralyzed and they could wiggle their toes.
Yeah, that's a win.
Yeah, it's an absolute win.
And were the doctors or anything telling you, like, Greg, there's a chance you might not ever be able to use this arm ever again? Like lift it or...
Yeah. No, it was one of those things where this surgery, it's possible, doesn't work. I didn't find out till down the road, actually, when my hand got made significant progress, that the same surgeon, he did the same exact surgery 2 weeks later to somebody, and it was just a complete wash.
Wow.
Yeah, and he said mine was kind of a miracle surgery. He actually, throughout the years, he takes videos of me, and he's like a world-renowned surgeon. And
wow, dude.
He plays videos of my hand, my arm at conferences in Switzerland, Germany, other places like that. So I was very lucky, not only not dying that day, not hitting my head too hard, getting brain damage, but I was put into the hands of an absolute miracle worker. So that was amazing.
Do you know this doctor's name?
Yeah, his name's Dr. John Capo. He practices out of NYU now. Yeah, he's a brilliant guy. It was him and another doctor. He was the doctor that worked everything, the nerve-wise and aftermath, but my original doctor was another savior, was this guy, Dr. Mark Riley, who I haven't seen in a while. He's another world-renowned guy because Dr. Capo says he sees him in Switzerland and Germany all the time. So, but he was amazing as well.
So now it sounds about like, all right, I got the dressing off. I know what my arm looks like. What's next for you?
Yeah, so the next thing is to start rehabbing. Not only just rehabbing, but wound care as well. You don't want to get infections, things like that. And I ended up getting an infection way down the road, but this time I didn't know the severity of what infections could really do to you. I've scraped my knee as a little kid. It's got infected and put Neosporin on it and you're fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I don't really understand the severity of these infections, but it was a very important part of the wound care at the time, and as well as rehabbing. And at this time, my psyche wasn't even an issue, but I know it was an issue, but it wasn't something that was being addressed. I was super depressed. I was down on myself, and I went to we had to find a hand therapist that was close to my house, because obviously when this happened, I was driving to New York. So these surgeons were a good 45 minutes, an hour from me, and all the hand therapists they know were up by them, an hour away. So I was trying to find a hand therapist by where we grew up, me and you. Yeah. And it's actually a funny story looking back. I went to a hand therapist. I'm not going to say the guy's name, but it was more of a mom and pop hand therapy place. That they probably deal with older people with arthritis and somebody who, just spends too much time typing on the computer all day. And I went in there, I called him first, asked him if he could do wound care and some hand therapy. I told him, nerve damage, muscle damage. And I sent him the papers from the doctor. He goes, yeah, no problem. And went in there. And at this time, we weren't exactly starting too much therapy for the movement of the hand, because like the doctor said, with the nerves, you kind of got to let the time do the work. But at the same time, you don't want to tighten up too much, so it's kind of more stretching, things like that. So a lot of it was based on wound care. So the doctor removed the dressing, and he looked at it, and it was still a fresh skin graft, pretty much just skin from my leg sitting on my arm in like a pie formation. And he looked at it, and he goes, oh, man, I need a cigarette after this.
No way.
And I turned to my dad. I said, Dad, let's get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here.
So he was able to change my dressing and all that, but that was the first and last time we saw him. Yeah, so then I had to find another one, and after that experience, I said, my mom came up with a good idea. Why don't we find a trauma center in the area and ask them where they send people, things like that. So I ended up going to Jersey Shore Medical, which is by us, which was one of the best trauma hospitals around here. And I found a hand therapist there who was very qualified, but he was actually ended up being a younger guy, which was in the long run ended up being awesome.
But at first you were like, how long have you been doing this? right? Or no?
No, not really. He was just like the original doctors. He was his bedside manner. He was just the type of guy that put you at ease. Forget about his professional qualifications. He knew how to deal with people as well, which was big.
That's so important, yeah.
And it ended up, he went to Red Bank Catholic as well. He was a younger guy, probably like 34, 35 at the time, and he went to the same high school as me. Yeah. He played some sports, things like that. He was an athletic guy. We had a lot in common, basically. Over the years, I was so thankful of it. Looking back at the time, I didn't think anything of it. But, now looking back, being that I was there with a younger guy who was like me, I was able to talk about college with him. I was able to talk about girls with him. I was able to talk about regular guy stuff with him. Whereas while I'm dealing with a super traumatic situation in my life, that it was kind of like exactly therapy. What you needed, yeah. It was like mental. It was mental therapy as well, without even noticing. So I was very lucky with him. His name's Jeff Breeden. He was amazing. I tell people that all the surgeons and stuff might have saved my arm and everything. He might have saved my life. Very thankful for him. Still talk to him to this day. And this happened almost 9 years ago. I still keep in touch with him. I actually, when I went to see him, he had brown hair. Now he has gray hair.
Wow. Sure appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're getting the hand therapy now, and so how long has it been at this point?
We're looking at about a month now. He's kind of just dealing with the wound care at this point, having me he's stretching my hand. Oh, you know what? Something I forgot about. I was in a, kind of a big thing. I was in a thing called an external fixator, which is, a lot of people don't know what it is. You most commonly see them on joint injuries with shattered joints. But a lot of people notice them on heads. If someone breaks their skull, you'll see it's kind of like a metal halo that's drilled into your head.
Okay. Did you ever see that movie Bleed for This?
No.
Where that guy, I mean, I don't know if it's the same thing, but the kid he broke his neck and he had a metal halo thing keeping his, I don't know if that's the same thing.
It's very similar. It was a metal structure that was drilled into my arm, my forearm, and my bicep to fixate my elbow into one spot for 4 months. So I couldn't move my elbow for 4 months, and I had these metal rods drilled into my bones. So walking around with this thing, like if I bumped into a door with this thing, that's some of the worst pain I've ever experienced. I'm talking even after being in that car accident, sitting in the car, because I was kind of in shock in the car accident.
Yeah.
Bumping into a door or something with this thing was bad. But anyway, so I couldn't move my elbow for a pretty long time. So this guy was kind of just helping me with wound care and moving my hand. And as time went on, we're talking 4 months before my next surgery. In that 4 months, I wouldn't call it significant, but given where I was, I got significant progress with how my hand was working. I was able to move my wrist a little bit. All my fingers worked a little bit. But at this time, I can't use all my fingers at once. They're kind of all moving on the same.
And it was probably a struggle even to lift it up a little bit, but they were moving.
Yeah, and the toughest part in those 4 months and for the next year and a half after that was, I would see people, say someone like you who I didn't see every day. I saw you once every month or once every 2 months. You would look at it and be like, oh my God, that looks great. When you look at something day to day, you don't really notice the tiny progress compared to someone who sees it, every 6 months. So it was frustrating. It was very frustrating not seeing a lot of progress. But Jeff kept me working, and I got to my next surgery, which was to take off the external fixator, and it dropped my elbow down, and I had to start using my elbow again. My elbow didn't work out that well because my elbow was completely shattered. I got some mobility out of the elbow. I could bend it a little bit. I'm not too concerned about that. The elbow, it's just an elbow.
Yeah, it's just an elbow. No big deal.
Yeah, and as long as I could use my hand a little bit, the elbow, whatever about the elbow. But yeah, no, so I started rehabbing the elbow and the hand at this point. Started getting aggressive with it. I found myself at tables with, this is actually a pretty interesting part of the story. This hand therapist, the type of people he deals with besides someone like myself, you're talking stroke patients. I told you the hospital we were at, there's some gunshot wounds, stroke patients. You're talking little kids with cognitive disorders, things like that. A whole array of things. And this added to the same thing about the gentleman in the bed next to me, where everyone else has other problems. I saw some of these stroke patients, and they can't even speak. They can't talk. You see their loved ones there trying to walk them through this, and they don't even recognize them. And they're just trying to get their hand to work. And here I am, my hand's messed up, but I have another hand. I got 2 legs I could walk on, and my brain works. I could talk to anybody I want. I could still do anything I want at this time, which was comforting, but it keeps things in perspective when you see some of the stuff other people are dealing with. But yeah, so then from there, I kept getting surgeries to keep getting better. I got a couple surgeries where they moved muscles around, to move muscles from one part of my arm to put them into my fingers so that the nerves...
The nerve skin graft thing, right?
Yeah. So the nerves that were rehealing would have some muscle to kind of fire them, because I did lose a lot of muscle in the arm. While the nerves were coming back, I still really couldn't use my hand because I didn't have the muscle power to do it. So they moved a lot of muscles around. That helped a lot.
That's truly amazing what they did.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
The medical field in general, I think it's amazing. I think this was 2009 when it happened. I mean, you put me as early as 2001. I don't know if I'm lucky enough. Yeah, no, it's very amazing. And I tell them, every time I saw my doctors, I told them how, that they're miracle workers, how amazing it is, and how lucky I am. I'm still down on myself. I'm keeping it in perspective. I'm still pretty depressed with the whole situation.
Was there at any point where like, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done?
No. And I think what kept me from that was, again, the support system around me, my family. Those first 4 months, my sister, I was living with my parents, my older sister, who was 21 or 22, which are the best years of your life, right? And I'm sitting in my bedroom. Matter of fact, before I came home from the hospital, my parents and my sisters went out and bought me a brand new bed because they knew I was going to be bedridden. They bought me a lazy boy that I could sit and stuff. But when I was finally home sitting in bed, my sister had went out and bought a bell so that I could sit in my bed and ring a bell and she would come bring me stuff. It was one of those things where I was just so lucky to have the support system, not only mentally but physically, as well as financially, which a lot of people don't realize. As a college student, you can't go on disability. You don't get a disability check. So financially, I was helped out as well. And I can't imagine somebody else that wasn't as fortunate as me with that type of support system, how they would feel. Maybe they would go down that road. There was a lot of drugs involved at this point, as far as my access to pain medication and pills. There's a lot of bad avenues that I could have fell down. Without my support system, I could definitely see someone else going down that road.
It's interesting, too, about like the psyche and the mental aspect of it, too, because I remember going up in your room and seeing you for the first time, and I'm just kind of in shock, just looking at you, just kind of shaking my head, and you were the one that was like, yo, like snap out of it, like I'm good. Like, and we just started to like watch TV or did whatever we did that day, but like you were very strong, and you seemed like you were good, and you put on a game face, and you said it was all good, and that made me feel better, but I don't know anybody mentally as strong as that. Like, that was just impressive.
My dad.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of stuff like that comes from my dad. My dad's one of the best guys out there. He's been through hell and back. I learned a lot about how to deal with adversity, things like that through my dad. So at this point, I'm rehabbing. I find myself at these tables with all these stroke patients, these little kids with brain disorders, things like that, gunshot victims, that wild stuff. That's stuff that I've never seen before either.
Yeah.
And I'm playing. They have me doing things with my hands. I was making beaded necklaces with my hand. Like, I felt like I was at a third grade arts and crafts fair. I felt like a child that, like, is this really going to help me making this bead necklace? And so doing things like that. I'm playing with wooden blocks and cones.
Literally starting over.
Yeah. I felt like a little kid, which not the good kind of little kid. Yeah, so that put me back there. So that was frustrating. But again, the guy Jeff, he kept me in somewhat good spirits, and I was still making progress, which was good. That definitely kept me involved. I was taking heavy pain medicine at the time, but I needed it.
How was that making you feel?
I felt lifeless, but I really needed it. The pain was really, really bad. I mean, when you take pain medicine every single day, there's no purpose out there. You kind of feel like you're there, but you can't talk to anybody. You can't participate. You're just kind of, your body's there, but your mind isn't. But could have gone down to a dark place. Really needed the pain medicine, which I think in the long term helped me out with not being a full addict or anything like that. But I did take it for quite a while. I was definitely, when I stopped taking it, I realized I was addicted to it when I stopped taking it, and I started going through withdrawals.
What were some of the withdrawal stuff?
It was 3 or 4 days of going to bed and just waking up in pools of sweat. And that was probably a year down the road. That was a year of taking pain medicine every single day, multiple times a day. But at the time, I'm still getting surgeries, so you can't just come out of a surgery and not take any pain medicine with the types of surgeries they were doing, where they're moving muscles and nerves and things like that. It's not something Advil could take care of.
And at a year later at this point, how many surgeries would you say you've had?
Probably about 12 now, maybe 9 to 12 area. But one of the biggest pains, the long-term pain that I deal with, which was way worse back then, was nerve pain. It's like an electrical feeling that just it's like getting pins and needles, but like the painful kind. And
doesn't stop.
It's very intermittent. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes, and you can't plan when it comes. You can't plan when it goes. And that was one of the tougher pains, along with obviously all the elbow pain and all that. That was difficult to deal with. I don't deal with it as much anymore. So we're about a year in now. We're next December. And I got a few muscle surgeries that really helped me out. It really helped me be able to close my fist. I could make my hand somewhat functional. I could use my pointer finger and my thumb, which are kind of like the two main factors in using your hand. If you really think about it, you could pick things up.
Most people don't. Most people don't think about that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, no, the thumb's like really important. I can't use my thumb perfectly still. My whole hand I can't use perfectly. But, obviously any progress I was happy about. So that kept happening. But at the same time, I still had to give 2 years for the nerve damage to really come along, for the nerve healing to come along. And I got about a year and a half in, and I'm still going to therapy 3 or 4 days a week. And it got to the point where I stopped making progress about a year and a half in, and I wasn't where I wanted to be, which is hard to deal with. Talking to the doctors, there's not much else we could do, this and that. They did one more muscle surgery, which it helped a tiny bit. I got to the point where I plateaued, and I had to come to terms with the fact that, this is probably how I'm going to have to live my life at this point. And that's when therapy went from healing and progress to more of an occupational therapy, which is learning how to live with your condition, which I'm not sure. I'm not an occupational therapist, but I feel like that's the difference between occupational therapists and physical therapy, is being able to deal with learning how to live with your disability or injury, than getting your injury back to where you were before.
Did this just put your psyche down in the gutter again, or?
Yeah, a little bit, but no, it did. I realized I'm not going to be able to use my hand. It's not going to get any better from here. At least before that, I was like, I could get better, I could get better, I could get better. And you could kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel and say, hopefully I get there. And you set goals for yourself. But now at this point, I realized this is it. But the progress I made from where I was on December 21st to 2 years down the road in itself was amazing. The doctors themselves were amazed at the progress. So given what happened to me, I was very, very, very lucky. It's hard to say you're lucky when you're in a situation like that, but it was in the past at this point, and I consider myself very lucky.
Yeah, definitely. So what happens after this? You're 2 years into it. You're not making any progress. You're doing the occupational therapy.
I stay in therapy and stuff like that. About 2 years in, I started going back to college. I hadn't gone back to school at this point. I was in therapy 4 days a week, getting surgeries every couple months. Not only that, with the pain medicine, hard to concentrate on school when you're... So I started back at school at a community college. I did a whole year there, and I graduated with an associate's degree in criminal justice. And that was we're probably now at 3 or 4 years in. And I'm still going to physical occupational therapy here and there, just to kind of keep my hand loose. A lot of the problem was that because of the nerve damage and the lack of use, a lot of the muscles would tighten up. The muscles that weren't being used would tighten up. So I would get a lot of cramping, a lot of things like that. So I wanted to learn some stretching techniques that I could do at home so that I didn't have to go to therapy for the rest of my life. And so then after that, I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in national security at this point from a school up in Jersey City University. So I was able to get my bachelor's degree, but the hardest part through that was now I'm living my life left-handed. I had to learn how to write left-handed. A lot of the teachers were pretty lenient. It was 2013, 2014 at this time. They're not hitting us with rulers or anything like that. You're allowed to bring laptops in. I learned how to type with one hand, things like that. I eventually learned how to write. Still don't write great, but I write pretty well. And it's one of those things when you have to do something, it comes a lot easier. Someone like you, if you went to go write with your opposite hand right now, you might not be great. But if you had to do it and you gave yourself a few months to do it, it's not one of those things that are impossible. And so my teachers were very lenient, and I got my degree. I thought I was clear of surgeries at this point. I knew at this point my injury was because of how traumatic the injury was, that I was going to deal with problems down the road. I didn't know what they were going to be, whether they were going to be structural issues, muscle issues, arthritis, if I take a fall, I might break something because of all the metal that's in there. I think I'm in the clear for the time, and I'm dealing with. I'm back into hanging out with my friends. I'm going out on the weekends, things like that. I'm off the pain medicine at this point. Not completely off. I'm not taking it every day at this point. I still take it today, and we're 8 years down the road. I still take it, but it's not every day, and I'm able to live my life now. But at that point, I'm back to hanging out with my friends. We got a Belmar house. We had things like that.
Living again.
Yeah, exactly. Not to go off track. I was listening to one of your episodes the other day.
Yeah. Which one?
The one with your original doctor. What's his name?
Dr. Hall?
Yeah, where you were telling him how you had to go to an AA meeting.
Yeah. For concussions, yeah.
So I'm going out with my friends. I'm having beers with my friends, things like that. But I'm still in my head. My arm still looks funny. I'm still worried about what people might think about it, things like that. So I'm still dealing with that side of the things. This time I've kind of come to terms with the lack of use and things like that. And I've learned ways to deal with it. Going from showering, tying my shoes, different techniques.
What about driving? Like, what's going on there? How long did it take you to hop back in a car? Was that traumatic for you?
It didn't take long to get back into a car.
Yeah, because you were driving to all the...
No. My dad drove me a lot. The reason I couldn't drive a lot was because of the pain medicine. I didn't want to get a DUI or anything like that because I'm on pain medicine. But when I wasn't on pain medicine, I got in the car. I missed being able to drive, and you know what's... I don't know if it's funny, but nobody ever told me I couldn't drive. Yeah. So nobody ever had to told me I can drive. I don't know. That's one of those things I didn't want to ask questions and find out the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of bypassed that whole situation. But
was it a little scary hopping back in the driver's seat for the first time?
No, driver's seat wasn't scary at all. Being in the passenger seat was scary.
Well, yeah, because you don't have control in that situation.
Yes, exactly. And it's not even just the fact because the accident happened while I was in a passenger seat. It's just because of what you said. You're not in control of the situation. And when you're not in the control of the situation, it's tough to deal with. Even the day I left the hospital from my initial hospital stay, my dad was driving. And Here I am back in the car with my dad. Not that my dad did anything wrong, but mentally it puts you back into what happened. And I made him drive, I think, like 45 miles an hour on the parkway on the way home.
Wow.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm never worried about how I'm driving. You got to worry about everyone else on the road and who's driving the car you're in. But yeah, I still haven't been on that road again.
Turnpike?
Yeah, well, I've been on the turnpike, but not the truck side. I tell people whenever someone else is driving, I give them a pretty big forewarning.
I've had the same thought process before, but there might be less traffic on that side because there's more trucks. I could just breeze by them.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to me. I'm going to car lane.
One of the state policemen told me that while there's more accidents on the car side, the percentage of accidents on the truck side that are fatal is way higher. Yeah. So you have a better chance of dying over there, but you have a better chance of getting into an accident over there. So you kind of got to pick your poison.
Oh man. So 4 years down the road, living again?
Yeah, living again, hanging out with my friends. At this time, I wasn't working yet.
How was it getting reintroduced back to the bar scene and like hanging out with people again? And like, was that uncomfortable for you?
No.
Were you wearing long sleeve shirts all the time? Were you letting it show? What was going on?
No, I was wearing long sleeves a lot. But getting back to hanging out with your friends, just like I've been saying this whole time, is my support system was so great throughout it all. I never lost that. And my friends would take me to parties, to get-togethers. Even when I had that metal thing on, the first 4 months, my friends dragged me out once or twice. But my big thing was I never want to be the pity story either.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
So I just I got back out there, and Rizzo and Louie, all those guys helped me out.
Yeah. Good people.
So yeah, back to where I am medically at this point. Now, me and my friends, we did the Belmar house, and that summer I was going to start working right after that summer. I was like, you know what, I just graduated college, so I was like, you know what, I'm doing this Belmar house thing, and then I'm going to start working.
Was this 2013, 14?
Yeah, 2013. Yeah, I think it was 2013.
Gotcha. All right.
So we're getting towards the end of the summer, and it's Labor Day weekend, and I'm not kind of feeling under the weather. I didn't know if it was just from being out in the sun, partying, whatever it was. And I still hung out with my friends that weekend. And then Sunday came along on Labor Day weekend, and I said, guys, I can't do it. I'm just going to go to my dad's house. I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to lay down. And at this time, I realized a month before that, I had a cut on my bad elbow that I didn't think anything of, and it healed. And right where that cut is, and I realized on this day, I have this huge, it's also, this cut is on the back of my arm, which all the nerve damage, I can't turn my arm. So I can't see it unless I'm in the mirror, pretty much. So I realized there's like a bubble on my arm.
Is it still there?
No, the bubble? No.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, this is where the infection started.
Okay.
So there was this bubble on my arm, and I realized that I'm kind of like playing with it, whatever, and it popped. This like bubble, and it was disgusting. I've never seen anything like it. It looked like shit just coming out of like your body. Anyway, so I called my surgeon immediately, who I haven't like seen for surgery in a little while now. And I told him what happened, that I think I have an infection. I feel really sick, and all this stuff just came out of this like wound. And he said, all right, just bandage it up, and first thing in the morning, go to the emergency room where he works, and he'll put me on the schedule for surgery. So just like that, within a day, I'm back into surgery. And
damn.
He looks at it in surgery, he cleans it out, and then we have another talk about my arm going.
What?
Yeah, so we didn't...
4 years later?
Yeah, so the infection, I guess I didn't notice it. I don't know if I should have noticed it. I don't know what, but it got so bad, the infection got down to the actual elbow that they repaired. It was considered, what do they call it, osteomyelitis?
Yeah.
Which I find out now. Again, I don't know this stuff. I thought infections are just, you got to scrape on your knee and put Neosporin on so it doesn't get infected and you're fine.
Yeah.
But no, this got to my elbow, and he had to have another talk about, well, we gotta take care of this infection, but if we can't, it's a possibility we gotta cut your arm off from the forearm. So he's doing like little wound care type things prior to this for the cut on my arm, because I had went to him about that cut, telling him this won't heal, this won't heal, this won't heal. And he was giving me like silver nitrate to put on it, all this type of stuff. And it ended up healing it. But once the skin closed, I guess, everything kind of like puffed up in there, yeah. So after surgery, he cleans it out, and he put me on this thing called a PICC line. It's a PICC line, which stands for peripheral something, something, something. And what it is it's a long-term antibiotic. It's a long-term IV. So they put an IV into your bicep, into your inside bicep, through a vein that goes directly to your heart, and they put the hollow tube all the way into your heart. I was given this tube into my heart. I had to give myself antibiotic medicine for the infection at home, because I had to do it 3 to 5 times a day for 6 weeks. So I did the 6 weeks of this. They say, okay, the infection went away. I did all these blood tests, things like that. No more infection. Thank God. But then a week later, it popped up again. I saw something weird, so I went back, and they does some more surgery.
I love how we're just talking so casually about like surgery now. Like,
yeah, well, that's yeah.
Surgery is like, that's never a small little thing. They got to knock you out.
Yep.
They got to put anesthesia. I mean, every time. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it was, I kind of got numb to the whole surgery thing. And the worst part is my parents are like more upset than I am. I'm like, stop it, come on.
Pull it together.
Yeah, right? I'm like, come on, you guys are stressing me out. No, but, yeah, so at this time, now they're doing more surgeries. Now I'm in the hospital for good like 2 or 3 weeks, and we're getting close to, that was the next time. So I'm in the hospital for about 2 weeks. They're doing surgery just about every other day, just pretty much going into the arm to clean the infection out. And what they did was they implanted antibiotic beads in there surgically, closed it up, and then a week later went in and took them out, hoping that the antibiotics they physically put in there would do something. It's kind of like an atomic bomb of antibiotics they put in there. And then again, I'm back on this PICC line. They ended up actually where the infection was, where it got to the bone, they took cadaver bone and filled it up with bone so that the infection didn't get back in there. So yeah, so then I'm on this. So they put me back on this PICC line.
For 6 weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks or whatever?
No, this time was a longer time. And they went with a more aggressive approach of medication now. I guess they realized, the infectious disease doctor realized it's a pretty complex infection. It's a tough infection. He used the word a shotgun approach. So before they thought they knew exactly what the infection was, this medication should fix it. It didn't. So now they went with the shotgun approach, which just means give it everything you got. So they gave it everything they got as far as medication. And they weren't going to let off, even if I said in 6 weeks I feel better and the blood test comes back good, they were going to keep going and going and going to make sure they're sure about this. So I was on it for about 7 to 9 months. I was at home giving myself IV medication.
How many times a day?
5 times a day.
And how long did you have to have, is the IV drip and the pick thing, how long did a session?
About 30 to 45 minutes.
So this was your day. This was your day for 9 months?
Yeah.
7 to 9 months?
Yeah, every day. And I was able to put the way the science works with the PICC line, it doesn't have to hang like a regular IV. It's a pressurized ball, so I could walk around with it in my pocket at least. But yeah, so that was my day. I couldn't do anything, obviously, with this medication. You can't just chill back and drink a beer if I wanted to. Nothing like that. I can't get a job. I can't go into a job and be like, well, you know what, actually, I have to give myself an IV right now.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a quick 6-hour break.
So that wasn't fun. And then I found myself back in the hospital again when they were taking why was I in the hospital? It had something to do with the infection. I was in the hospital again. I think they just went back to look in it and clean it out more.
Right.
Make sure to get a physical eye on the situation, I think. And everything gets hazy at this point. It's all years ago, and I didn't write a diary or anything.
Yeah.
So, but I was in the hospital for the Super Bowl, actually, and I had a wound care vacuum connected to my arm to keep cleaning the infection out.
Uh-huh.
And I told the doc, because I had spent multiple holidays in the hospital. That first time I was in the hospital, actually, it was December 19th. I was in there for 2 weeks. I spent New Year's in the hospital. I saw on Snapchat, Instagram, all my friends having all this fun, things like that. I've spent my birthday in the hospital. I've spent New Year's twice, I think. I've spent my friends' birthdays, Valentine's Days, all types of holidays in the hospital. And this was the Super Bowl. I've had to watch big sporting events in the hospital. Yeah. It's not fun. And so I begged the doctor. I said, listen, could I just leave for one day and come back?
Wow.
And the doctor was like, yeah, but you got to take the wound thing with you, the wound vacuum. So I went to my friend's Super Bowl party with a wound vacuum. Yeah, it looked like a 80, 90-year-old man. But yeah, no, I saw the Super Bowl. And I went back to the hospital the next day to get operated on again. And again, it all goes back to my support system. I was able to go hang out with my friends, things like that. My family drove me everywhere. They supported me financially still, and I'm still very lucky at this point, as bad as the situation was. Yeah, so the infection finally, after about 9 months, the infection went away. But through those 9 months, I had to go through that whole process of, am I losing the arm again? Do I have to lose the arm again? But it was a lot easier this time because of all the progress I made the first time and how well acclimated I got to becoming a lefty. So at this point, shitty as it sounds, if they took my arm, I do everything left-handed anyway. There's a lot of things I do two-handed that would definitely be a struggle, but in my mind, I think I'd be fine. Yeah.
And, hell, you can play golf now left-handed, right?
Yeah, that's one of a lot of people, whenever I play with them, are pretty amazed by it. It's a pretty good story. When I first got hurt, maybe, 6 months after, my dad told me about a kid we know that actually, a kid I know I grew up with, his name, I don't want to say his name, but a kid I know with lost his arm maybe 2 or 3 years before my accident. He was actually going to come and visit me in the hospital before they knew if they were cutting my arm off or not, just to kind of talk to me and be like, listen, here I am. I'm fine. I'm alive. Yeah. Look at me. My life hasn't changed that much. There's no reason to beat yourself up about it, because I've talked to him since. By the time he was able to make it up or whatever, they had already told me I was going to keep my arm. So he ended up not making the trip. But anyway, back to way down the road, about 6 months down the road, my dad told me, he's like, blah, 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 plays golf with one hand and he's pretty good. You should try it out. Because at this point, I'm pretty beat up that my friends are I'm 19, 20 years old. My friends are still playing pickup basketball, roller hockey. You're still playing college hockey at this time. And, all these active things that my friends are doing, and I can't. Now I'm going to put on all this weight, this and that. That's all running through my head. So a couple, maybe 3 or 4 years in, at age like 22, I picked up golf. I tried playing golf. I got a lesson. I tried playing golf with one hand, and I fell in love with it. It's something I avidly do today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. It's an expensive sport, though.
Yeah, I just bought clubs.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were we talking about before the golf thing?
Before the golf thing was the infection.
Yeah, and then so it took what? It took a couple surgeries and a year for that one infection to go away?
Yeah, it probably took about 9 surgeries and about 6 weeks in the hospital, spread out, and about a year for the infection to go away. And now I know whenever I get cuts and things like that, you got to really take care of them, and that's why your parents tell you.
Yeah.
Clean up all your cuts with peroxide or whatever it is, because it can be really bad, and a lot of people don't realize that. But I found out down the road the infection probably came from all the metal that was in my arm. It kind of attracts, again, not a doctor, but that had a play in the infection.
So the infection's done with. How's your overall health been the last couple of years?
The last couple of years I've been pretty good. I might get surgery soon, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's not that big of a thing, but again, I downplay surgery now, so it's still surgery, but it's something I had where they took the nerves out of my leg and put them into my arm. Your nerves naturally, where they cut them off, they naturally want to regrow, and sometimes they start regrowing and they have nowhere to go because they basically cut the street off. They imagine like a bridge going to a street. They knock the bridge down. It has nowhere to go. So it's just gonna cause a traffic jam there. Right. So what happens is it causes a tumor. So it's a ball. Imagine that traffic jam being a big ball and just growing into a bigger and bigger ball of nerve.
Gotcha.
So it's a ball of nerve, and it's like if you tap this thing, your whole body just jumps.
That's in your arm right now?
No, it's in my leg where they took the nerves out of. And I've had one before that was surgically removed, and I just found out I have another one. It's a benign tumor, so it's one of those things. If I want it removed, if the pain's bothering me, so
you might do that?
I got to assess the situation, see where I am in other aspects of life, if it's really worth it right now, if I should wait.
What do you want to do in the future? What do you want to get into? Now that you know how important your health is and everything, that you're pretty much you're good again, where do you see yourself?
Well, right now I'm actually in the process of getting my real estate license.
Awesome.
Ever since the last maybe year or two, I've taken a big dive into real estate. I enjoy it. One of our good friends, John, his father is a real estate agent. He's kind of like a second father to me, and he's helped me out. That's kind of what I want to do, and it's one of those things where, as a real estate agent, you're not a 9-to-5 worker, but it is definitely a hard job. You got to put time into it. But I think I could find ways to still enjoy my life, because after what happened, you really learn to appreciate everything, and you want to see everything and want to be able to travel.
What's the biggest thing you've taken away from all this shit that has happened to you?
I think there's 2 big things. I think one is the one thing I've reiterated a few times is no matter what it is, somebody has a worse situation than you. And you can't go out complaining, because, actually there were times where I hear other people complaining. I'm sitting there like, if these damn people only knew. And I'm like, shut the hell up. And so that's why I didn't really go out and complain. I complained to some of my close friends, things like that. You do have to vent.
I wouldn't say that was complaining. I would say that's more venting.
Yeah, I was going to say, you do have to vent. You can't just keep everything, and you do have to talk to people about things. But everyone out there has problems. You hear people say, oh, my family's so fucked up, this and that. Everyone has family problems. Everyone has their own problems, and some people are worse than others, and you really don't know the story about the person next to you, the person across the room from you. You got to deal with your own problems, and it's how you deal with them who really makes you who you are, how you deal with adversity. And I think the second biggest thing would be just like my value on life, I guess you would say, how much more I appreciate things, like the little things. I don't get too upset about little things anymore. With my dad after that day, it was actually about a year before that, my dad got sick. There's a whole other story, but whatever. About a year before that, my dad got sick. He had a heart attack, and I didn't know if he was going to stay around. Then this happened to me. Ever since then, every single time I talk to my father, tell him I love him. He tells me he loves me. And it's one of those things, you appreciate the things that are around you. And this shouldn't have to happen to somebody for everyone to do that. That's why I kind of like what you're doing. I've listened to a couple of your episodes, and you kind of bring out the more positive things in life, positive energy, things like that. It's cool.
Thank you, Greg. This is one of my favorite episodes, man. I've been waiting to hear this story for a long time, and I don't think a lot of people know all the hell that you've been through, because number one, you don't complain. Like, you're always in good spirits, and that's a lesson in itself. And, like, anybody that knows you knows that you're, like, people like I tell everyone, like, Greg's my fucking hero, man. Like, the kid never complains. All my other group of friends from Howell, they love you just because you're just a genuine person and you're authentic and you're just always in high spirits after all the shit you've been through. So,
well, I really appreciate that, and I was honored to be asked to be on here, to be honest with you. And I think I haven't listened to all your episodes, but I'm sure you've told your story. Your story is incredible. You're one of the best guys I've known since I was 8 years old, and to many more, and hopefully more people find out your story, what you're doing, and what a great guy you are.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. My private practice is located in New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. If you have any additional questions about today's podcast, other episodes, or any questions about Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic in general, feel free to visit my website at drkevinpecca.com or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca. Hope you enjoyed the show. Cheers.